What if the moment you take your last breath isn't when your journey truly begins, but when the most extraordinary transformation of your existence unfolds over the next 100 days? This revelation comes from one of history's most documented psychics, Edgar Cayce, whose readings unveiled a detailed map of what happens to consciousness during those critical first months after physical death. What he discovered will fundamentally change how you view mortality itself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Through over 14,000 documented readings conducted while in deep trance states, Cayce revealed that death is merely the beginning of an intricate process that unfolds in precise stages over exactly 100 days. Unlike popular misconceptions that consciousness simply continues unchanged or instantly transforms, Cayce's spirit guides described a methodical progression where the soul undergoes specific adaptations, encounters particular challenges, and receives specialized assistance at predetermined intervals. The first revelation that startled even Cayce himself was the discovery that newly departed souls don't immediately understand their condition. In reading after reading, spirits described a period of profound confusion where they remained aware but couldn't comprehend why their physical actions no longer produced expected results. One documented case involved a departed businessman who spent days trying to continue his daily routine, becoming increasingly frustrated when colleagues and family members seemed to ignore his presence completely. This initial phase, according to Cayce's guides, typically lasts between 7 to 14 days and serves a crucial purpose in the soul's adaptation process. During this time, what Cayce termed the consciousness adjustment period, the spirit begins to recognize that fundamental changes have occurred while maintaining enough connection to earthly awareness to process this realization gradually rather than experiencing traumatic shock. Modern neuroscience has begun validating aspects of these century-old revelations. Recent studies at the University of Michigan discovered that dying brains can exhibit heightened activity levels that exceed normal consciousness, suggesting that awareness may indeed intensify rather than diminish during the transition process. Dr. Jimo Borjigin's research team found that electrical activity in dying brains showed patterns associated with heightened perception and processing, exactly what Cayce described as enhanced spiritual sensitivity during the early post-death period. But Cayce's most shocking discovery concerned what happens during the second week after death. His readings revealed that between days 14 and 21, departed souls begin experiencing what he called the life panorama, a complete review of their earthly existence that unfolds not as simple memory recall, but as lived experience, where they feel the emotional impact of every action they ever took from the perspective of everyone they affected. This process, Cayce explained, isn't judgment imposed by external forces, but rather the natural result of consciousness expanding beyond the limitations of physical existence. Suddenly, the soul experiences perfect empathy, feeling the joy they brought to others and the pain they caused with equal intensity. One particularly moving case involved a departed mother who experienced overwhelming gratitude as she felt the love her children held for her, followed by profound remorse as she experienced their pain during moments when she had been impatient or dismissive. What makes this revelation even more extraordinary is the precision with which Cayce's readings described the mechanism behind this phenomenon. According to his spirit guides, the etheric body, which maintains the complete record of all earthly experiences, becomes fully accessible to consciousness once freed from physical brain limitations. This expanded awareness allows the soul to process their entire lifetime from a perspective of complete understanding rather than the partial viewpoint available during physical existence. The third phase, occurring between days 21 and 40, presents what Cayce considered the most critical period in the soul's post-death journey. During this time, the departed consciousness encounters what his readings called the attraction of spiritual development. Essentially, the soul begins moving toward the spiritual realm or dimension that corresponds to their level of consciousness development achieved during earthly life. This movement isn't about reward or punishment, but rather about spiritual gravity. Souls naturally gravitate toward environments that match their vibrational frequency, determined by the thoughts, emotions, and actions that dominated their earthly existence. Those who cultivated love, compassion, and service find themselves drawn to realms of light and harmony, while souls dominated by selfishness, hatred, or destructive behaviors experience attraction to lower vibrational planes characterized by confusion and conflict. Cayce's readings provided detailed descriptions of these various spiritual realms, which he termed planetary influences or spheres of development. Each realm offers specific learning opportunities and challenges appropriate to the soul's current level of spiritual evolution. What's remarkable is that these descriptions align closely with near-death experience accounts documented by modern researchers like Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Kenneth Ring, despite being recorded decades before their scientific investigations began. During this attraction phase, Cayce's readings reveal that souls received their first major assistance from what he called spiritual helpers or guides. These entities, described as souls who have completed their earthly development cycles, specialize in helping newly departed spirits understand their new condition and navigate the transition to appropriate spiritual realms. The relationship between helper and soul is based on compatibility and the specific type of assistance needed. One documented case from Cayce's readings involved a departed scientist who had been materialistic during life but genuinely sought truth through his research. His spiritual helper was described as a former researcher who had completed his earthly cycles and now specialized in assisting souls who needed to understand how spiritual laws operate with the same precision as physical laws they had studied during life. The fourth phase, spanning days 40 to 70, represents what Cayce termed the adjustment and learning period. During this time, souls begin actively participating in their new environment, learning how consciousness operates without physical limitations, and beginning to understand their role in the broader spiritual ecosystem. This phase often involves reunions with loved ones who have preceded them in death, though Cayce emphasized that these reunions serve educational purposes rather than simple emotional comfort. According to the readings, deceased family members and friends who have already adapted to spiritual existence serve as teachers and guides for newly arrived souls. However, these reunions are temporary and purposeful, designed to help the new arrival understand their situation and begin developing the skills needed for spiritual existence. The depth and duration of these reunions depend on the spiritual development of both parties and the specific assistance needed. What's particularly fascinating about Cayce's descriptions of this phase is the emphasis on continued learning and growth. Death doesn't represent an end to development, but rather graduation to expanded opportunities for consciousness evolution. Souls discover that they can think themselves to different locations instantaneously, communicate telepathically with perfect clarity, and perceive multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. However, these new abilities come with corresponding responsibilities. Cayce's readings emphasize that preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Thought and intention in the spiritual realm has immediate consequences, making self-discipline and positive focus essential for comfortable existence. Souls who arrive with undisciplined mental habits often require extensive assistance to learn constructive thought patterns. The fifth and final phase, occurring during days 70 to 100, involves what Cayce called the stabilization and purpose recognition period. By this time, souls have typically adapted to their new existence and begin understanding their role in the spiritual realm they've been attracted to. This phase marks the beginning of their service or learning activities in their new environment. Cayce's readings indicate that every soul, regardless of their earthly spiritual development, has opportunities for continued growth and service in the spiritual realm. Those who arrive at higher vibrational levels may immediately begin serving as guides for other souls or working on projects that benefit both spiritual and physical realms. Souls arriving at lower levels begin educational processes designed to help them develop the love and wisdom needed to progress to higher realms. One of the most profound aspects of this final phase is what Cayce termed purpose clarification. Souls begin understanding not just their current situation, but also their eternal destiny and the experiences they may need to complete their spiritual evolution. This understanding often includes awareness of whether they will eventually return to earthly existence for additional learning, or if they have completed their physical incarnation cycles. The remarkable precision of Cayce's 100-day timeline receives validation from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the renowned psychiatrist who pioneered modern death and dying research, documented cases where deceased patients communicated with family members at specific intervals that closely match Cayce's phase descriptions. Her research subjects reported initial confusion, followed by life review experiences, encounters with deceased relatives, and finally a sense of peaceful acceptance and new purpose. What makes Cayce's revelations even more compelling is their practical implications for the living. His readings consistently emphasized that understanding the post-death process can profoundly improve how people approach both life and death, knowing that consciousness continues and that every earthly action has spiritual consequences naturally encourages more compassionate and purposeful living. The readings also provided specific guidance for families dealing with the death of loved ones. Cayce explained that the thoughts, prayers, and emotional states of family members during those critical 100 days can significantly influence the departed soul's transition experience. Positive, loving thoughts and prayers create what he called supportive vibrations that assist the soul's adaptation, while excessive grief, anger, or guilt can create energetic disturbances that complicate the process. This doesn't mean that normal grieving is harmful, but rather that prolonged, intense negative emotions directed toward the deceased can create psychic connections that make it more difficult for the soul to progress through their natural development phases. Cayce recommended that families focus on sending love, gratitude, and encouragement to departed loved ones, while allowing themselves to process their own grief in healthy ways. One particularly moving case from Cayce's files involved a young mother who had lost her infant daughter. Through readings conducted during the first 100 days after the child's death, Cayce was able to convey messages from the child's spirit describing her peaceful transition and current state of happiness in a spiritual realm designed for souls who had brief earthly experiences. These communications provided immense comfort to the grieving mother while illustrating the detailed awareness Cayce's sources had of individual souls' post-death experiences. The accuracy of Cayce's 100-day timeline received unexpected confirmation from hospice workers and grief counselors who noticed that families often experience significant shifts in their grieving process around the 3-month mark. Many report sudden feelings of peace or closure, sometimes accompanied by dreams or other experiences, suggesting communication from deceased loved ones. These observations align perfectly with Cayce's description of souls completing their initial adaptation process and beginning their stabilized existence in spiritual realms. Modern thanatology research has also identified what researchers call complicated grief, which occurs when normal grieving processes extend beyond typical timeframes without resolution. Interestingly, therapeutic interventions for complicated grief often show marked improvement when implemented around the 100-day mark, suggesting that some natural transition process may indeed occur during this timeframe for both the deceased and their surviving loved ones. What emerges from studying Cayce's revelations about the soul's 100-day journey is a profound sense of death as transformation rather than termination. His readings consistently portrayed death as a graduation ceremony where consciousness expands beyond physical limitations and begins exploring vastly greater realities. This perspective offers comfort to those facing their own mortality while providing meaningful framework for understanding the death of loved ones. The readings also emphasize that preparation for this transition occurs throughout earthly life rather than beginning at death. Every act of kindness, every moment of genuine spiritual seeking, every choice to serve others rather than purely selfish interests, contributes to the soul's readiness for smooth transition through the 100-day adaptation process. This understanding naturally encourages living with greater purpose and compassion. Cayce's spirit guides consistently taught that the quality of consciousness developed during earthly life determines not just the soul's destination after the 100-day period, but also the ease and grace with which they navigate the transition process itself. Souls who have cultivated love, wisdom, and service find each phase unfolding naturally and beautifully, while those dominated by fear, hatred, or selfishness require more extensive assistance and often experience significant challenges during adaptation. This principle applies regardless of religious background or specific beliefs held during earthly life. Cayce's readings emphasize that spiritual laws operate based on consciousness development rather than doctrinal adherence. A person who lived with genuine love and service but held no formal religious beliefs would experience smoother transition than someone who claimed religious faith but lived selfishly or harmfully toward others. The universality of these principles provides hope and encouragement for people from all backgrounds and belief systems. Death becomes not a fearful unknown, but a well-mapped territory with clear guidelines for preparation and navigation. Understanding the 100-day process allows people to approach both life and death with greater confidence and purpose. Perhaps most importantly, Cayce's revelations about the soul's post-death journey emphasize the eternal nature of consciousness and the continued opportunities for growth and service beyond physical existence. Death represents not an ending, but commencement of expanded existence, where the limitations of physical life no longer constrain the soul's development and service potential. These teachings invite a fundamental shift in perspective about mortality itself. Rather than viewing death as something to be feared or avoided, it becomes a natural transition to be prepared for and approached with the same care and consciousness brought to other important life transitions. The 100-day journey represents the soul's graduation ceremony, and like any graduation, the experience reflects the preparation and development that preceded it. The profound wisdom contained in Edgar Cayce's revelations about the soul's 100-day journey after death offers both comfort and guidance for one of humanity's most universal experiences. Whether approaching your own mortality or supporting loved ones through their transitions, understanding this detailed map of consciousness evolution provides a framework for navigating death with grace, purpose, and hope for the continued adventure of spiritual existence. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.